Hello and welcome to another Magic 2015 gameplay. Today we're taking a look at a Simic aggro deck, I guess you could call it, which has a lot of card draw once it gets going. So let's take a look at the deck list, which by the way was inspired by a deck list posted on the No Goblins Allowed forums, which is a great place for any player looking for Duels of the Planeswalkers discussions and deck lists. So I highly recommend paying it a visit. But let's go to the deck list, which as you can see is very low curve, a lot of 1-drops, and it has a pretty good reason for having all those 1-drops, and that's a military intelligence. Allows you to draw a card when you attack with 2 or more creatures. So if you get a 1-drop, then maybe a 2-drop on turn 2, and then drop this on turn 3, attack, you get to draw a card right away. And if you get the stream of creatures going, it basically means you get to draw 2 cards every turn, with your draw step included. And then you've got some pretty good tools like Vapor Snag to stay ahead, or even Switcheroo. But let's go through all the cards one by one, starting with the Cloudfin Raptor, a single blue for a 0/1 with Evolve. So if we play a creature with power or toughness more than 0/1, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on it, and we can repeat this whenever we play a creature. So a Cloudfin Raptor is just a good evasive creature that usually only is a 1/2 for the start of the game. Later it can become a little bigger, but usually not too much. And it's a great card with military intelligence, because even if it's only a 0/1 attacking, you still get to draw a card if you're attacking with 2 or more creatures, so you don't have to deal damage, which is usually the case for these types of cards. Then Triton Shorestalker is just a 1/1, unblockable, so pretty simple, but pretty efficient in this deck. Probably the best 1-drop you can have. Vapor Snag I already touched on briefly. It's just a good card in this type of deck where you draw a lot of cards to stay ahead, because usually these types of cards are card disadvantage, because you're not actually getting rid of the opponent's creature permanently, but because this is such a tempo based deck that's getting ahead on board very quickly and drawing cards, this is actually a perfect card for it. And the low mana cost of 1 blue and also dealing 1 damage to the opponent is actually quite relevant, so a very good card in this deck. Military Intelligence I already discussed, is probably the centerpiece of the deck, and you usually want to see this in your opening hand. Then Chasm Skulker is also very good in this deck, because you usually draw a lot of extra cards, which means he grows very quickly, and then if the opponent kills it, you still get a ton of island walking squid tokens, which can usually close out the game if the Skulker was big enough. Then Bident of Thassa is probably not as good as Military Intelligence in the early game, because it costs so much mana, but once you deploy it and have a bunch of flying or unblockable creatures out, you usually get to draw a full grip every turn, which is pretty sweet. But we're only running one of the 2 availables, because 4 mana is pretty expensive in this deck, and you can't have 2 out at the same time, and we already have Military Intelligence that fills the same role, so we don't quite need to have 2 of them. And then Switcheroo is perhaps not a real win condition, but it definitely helps in this deck, where you can simply get rid of one of your weak creatures in exchange for one of your opponent's stabilizing creatures, which are usually pretty big. So it's not as good as Mind Control, but it's pretty close, and Mind Control is a pretty broken card, so Switcheroo is not bad. And you can usually buy us a couple of turns so we can find more cards to try and close out the game. Spire Tracer is not quite unblockable, but pretty close. Can only be blocked by creatures with flying or reach. There's not that many with reach, and there's a couple with flying, but usually this will go unblocked the first couple of turns, which is good enough in this deck. Young Wolf is a 1/1 with Undying, so when it dies it comes back as a 2/2, and it does get to evolve the Cloudfin Raptor if it's already evolved once, because a 2/2 will evolve a 1/2. so that's a nice synergy. But since he isn't unblockable, he's not as good as the other 1-drops, so we're only running 3 of them. But the fact that he has Undying means you can still attack with him twice before he dies forever. Then Elvish Visionary, just a cheap creature that draws a card, gives you more cards to see in order to reach your military intelligence, which is pretty important. And then we have Beastmaster Ascension, which is another finisher in this deck. Once you get a few creatures out, it's not as easy to kill the opponent in one attack because we're not running a token deck, we're running just a lot of cheap creatures. So you won't usually kill the opponent with 7 creatures right away, but usually in 2 hits you can get it done if you have like 4 creatures out. That's 4 and an 8, which is enough to trigger the Ascension and usually win the game. But if you can, it's better obviously to play it out when you have 7 attacking creatures right away. And then we have Mycoloth, which is the other big finisher in the game. Devour 2 means you can sacrifice a creature when you play him, and he gets 2 +1/+1 counters for every sacrificed creature. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, the fun starts, and you get to put green Saproling tokens for each +1/+1 counter on Mycoloth. So if you... Usually you don't want to sacrifice your whole board, because then if the opponent has spot removal for this creature, then you're pretty screwed. But usually sacrificing 1 or 2 creatures is good enough. And the tokens do synergize nicely with the Ascension and with cards like Bident or even Military Intelligence. So yeah, that's the deck in a nutshell. Low curve, but we're still running 24 lands because we do want to get up to 5 mana consistently for those big finishers. And we're running the full amount of dual lands in blue and green. So there you go. So let's jump into a game. Alright, let's take a look at our opener. Only 1 land and a lot of green 1-drops, no military intelligence, so I think we can mulligan this one. Alright, this one's a little better. And no military intelligence to start off, but we do have some card draw with Elvish Visionary. And 2 unblockables. Nice, okay, we have a backup plan in Switcheroo. I think here we can lead with Island Shorestalker. Next turn we can either go Shorestalker Guildgate or Forest into Elvish Visionary, which I don't hate, since we do want to find one of those card draw enchantments as quickly as possible. That's an interesting card. Haven't seen that one often. Cloudfin Raptor. Alright. I kind of want to go Cloudfin Raptor Guildgate. So then next turn we can evolve it by playing any of our creatures, and then we can still go Shorestalker and Visionary next turn. Yeah, seems alright to me. Let's get in for 1. And play the Raptor. And say go. There's not a ton of ways to grow the Raptor in this deck, but usually having a 1/2 flyer is good enough in this deck. Alright, so our opponent's probably playing all 5 colors, I'm assuming. Alright, let's lead with Forest and play the Visionary, leaving open green and blue. Evolving the Raptor and drawing a card. Another land is not exceptional, but our opponent hasn't put up any threat of his own. And we also have this Vapor Snag. We do have to worry a bit about Anger of the Gods, but I think we don't have a good enough board state that we can just sit back here, so I think I will run out the other Shorestalker here. We also do have the switcheroo as a backup plan. Alright, one of each. Let's see what colors he gets. Could be telling of what he has in hand. Oh, we don't get to see that. I should reveal them, but I didn't see them. Oh well. So we drew another Spire Tracer. Yeah, let's attack, I guess. Not doing a ton of damage, but every bit counts. And if our opponent doesn't have a way to catch up, then we could very well get there with the small unblockables. Representing a counterspell here. Alright, let's see if it gets revealed now. It does not. I guess that's a bug then. Alright, no double red. Time Warp. Alright. Not exceptional right now, it's just an explorer more or less. Alright, all 5 colors, so I'm expecting something big here, which we will be able to Vapor Snag. Soul of Ravnica, yeah, that's not gonna stick. We could have switcherooed it, but there we go, not bad. So our opponents could have spot removal for our Mycolith. So let's attack first, and then we'll decide how many creatures we want to sacrifice. I could have played him first to evolve the Raptor, but that means sacrificing creatures and losing power, so unless we only sack one creature, it doesn't matter, and if we sack more than one, then we deal less damage if we play him first. So let's see, how many creatures do we want to sacrifice? I don't think more than 2, but 2 is already a lot, since it will change our clock significantly. So I think I'm actually okay with just sacking one creature, and keeping a 2-turn clock if he does have a way to deal with it. You always feel bad if the opponent doesn't have removal for it, and you could have had more tokens, but you can't always be too greedy. I guess it would have still been a 2-turn clock with the Raptor evolving, but I don't think we're in a bad spot here, as we can switcheroo away the soul for one of our summoning sick tokens and get in there with everyone. Opponent still not enough white to play Planar Cleansing, and no double red for Anger of the Gods, which now isn't even great with these 2 6/6s. So I don't see how the opponent gets out of this. Let's play the land in case we draw into Biden of Thassa, in which case we want to have as many lands as possible for all the cards we draw. Alright, there's the double red, could have Anger, but then he still has to deal with these creatures. So I'm guessing Anger plus Reprisal. Could have the Edict card, so he could technically kill our entire board, but I think he has to have a very specific combination of cards. So there's step 1, Anger of the Gods, and there's no follow-up. Could still have an Edict to gain life, but no, that's not an option anymore. So I think we got there. Get some more tokens, because why not? How far are we? 7 mana, so 1 land away from drawing 2 cards, but I guess we'll have to settle with a win. Alright, there we go. I wanna thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, have a nice day.